The last Oricru. I think it's pretty decent, and if it's on sale or still sitting in your library, this video will help you decide if you want to spend your money and time on it. In short, you can have a good time with it, especially for 11 euros, but this purchase is not without caveats, so keep watching. Hey everyone, Thyworm here, and welcome to another episode in the Why This Game in 2023 May Surprise You, a video series where I'm playing older games today to see how they hold up. This video I have The Last Oricru, released October 2022, developed by Gold Knights, published by Prime Matter. It has a 66% mixed Steam rating. I bought it on sale for only 11 euros, which is like 65% off, and with that price in mind I am reviewing this game. Do not buy this at full price under any circumstances, in my opinion. Options are up first. It's passable, I suppose, nothing fancy. I was pleasantly surprised to see DLSS in there, but good for you if you run an Nvidia card. For me, the game ran fine, but you would expect that on a 4080. You can see my specs on screen. I will say though, in the 11 hours it took me to finish the game, I had 0 crashes or game-breaking bugs. Also, I played this entirely single player, but the game has co-op too. So with that out of the way, let me tell you about The Last Oricru, which I think means The Last Immortal. It is a mix of various genres, from old-school ARPGs like Riven to Souls-like games with recognizable combat, upgrades using campfires, collecting souls and losing them upon dying, plus the game has flasks. It's a third-person, story-driven action RPG with an interesting narrative and meaningful choices that shape your adventure and alter many world events. You are Silver, one of the least customizable characters in 2022, a male by default, and you are just fucking weird. I've been listening to this guy for an entire playthrough, and I still can't really figure out what drives this nutjob. I'll get to what Silver is supposed to do and all, but let's talk about him as a human being, first of all.
Then let me help you now.
Yes, indeed. One of 1,000 deaths can be deaths of 1,000 enemies.
I might actually prefer to be a savior of thousands of lives, but I guess we'll have to see what the Naboru think.
Yes. Tell me, how is our king holding?
It's bad. But not that bad. Some of the Brathas are still holding up. The Naboru have the city. That's one battle, but we can still win the war.
Silver is someone who talks a lot. He tries to be funny, but he's got the sense of humor that Farengar has in Skyrim when he sends you on a menial task. Imagine listening to Farengar for 11 hours. You have to be up for that. And not only that, Silver has no background story whatsoever. No family, no morals, no friends, not a single note about his life, no meaningful choices he's ever made until this game started. Nothing. He is an empty shell, but he still tries to make smart-ass comments. And while I didn't hate it, and I do sort of see why the devs maybe didn't want to give him too much backstory, because then he can make any decision in-game, Silver is still an extremely unrelatable protagonist, and in a story-driven ARPG that might put some people off, so there's a fair warning. Fortunately, the other NPCs he meets are much more fleshed out. He meets other humans who, like Silver, also were launched into this alien planet of Wangaria without knowing how they got there or why. All they know is they have an immortality belt, meaning you can't die. Or well, you can and you will, but you will always revive. The humans are being trained by the local Naboru, an alien race, one of the 2 inhabitants of the planet. It's a rather advanced race with a monarchy, high-tech society, and strict religion and rules. Quite their counterparts are the Redkin, rat-like humanoids that have more taste for blood than brainpower. They want to destroy the Naboru, because the Naboru made them slaves many decades ago. Both races are at war and you're in the middle of it. You can pick a side, you must actually, and you can swap sides in conflict in between as well, and every time you do, the next part of the game plays out differently. In the opening location, an ancient monastery, you can side with the Naboru, which means you have to liberate the monastery from the Redkin, a lot of vermin slaying that's for sure, or you side with the Redkin, meaning you only kill a few Naboru, but otherwise the monastery is conquered by those Redkin and they are now your allies and you're free to go where you please. Later, the choices result in different boss fights, different rewards and different plot lines. Ultimately, when you finish the game, you get a list of all the choices you made, in case you still care at that point. While the narrative isn't going to put these writers on the shortlist to replace Quentin Tarantino, it is fairly decent and easily one of the more elaborate and thought out parts of this game. It's all voice acted too, which must have cost a small fortune. And it does help to elevate that plot just above your average ARPG trope. I thought it was enjoyable and it was definitely a reason for me to keep pushing and playing. Other reasons to do that were the sense of exploration, which the last Oricru in my opinion simply nails. The world building and level design are done well, there's not much backtracking, and you can always unlock shortcuts to get from A to B faster, including the boss fights. The devs have hidden a lot of gear and loot in corners and harder to find places, plus the game has optional puzzles too with great rewards, like an additional flask charge. This brings back that sense from older third-person ARPG titles around the year 2007 or so, where it was more about that journey and the immersion rather than the goal. Here, I felt a similar vibe. The absence of a minimap increases that immersion somewhat more, although a regular map is available to you. On the other hand, killing that immersion a bit is the UI, which is clunky, not very intuitive and mostly just bad. You'll get used to it, but the start of this game will be a little rough in that department. Another aspect I enjoyed quite a bit was the pacing of the game and the overall progression. While it wasn't always clear to me where I needed to go, and the journal is lacking a lot of information in that regard, I did feel that this ARPG changed location often enough, offered quite some new and interesting and varying enemy types, and the game itself never got boring. Sure, sometimes frustrating, with you wondering why you can't figure out where to go, but as long as you keep listening to what the NPCs tell you, you should be fine. There's very little hand-holding in the last Oricru, and some might regard that as a positive. I do, at least. Don't expect too many quest markers either, there's none in the game, there are a few on your map. In terms of character progression, this game does a good job I feel. There's plenty of loot and weapons, it drops all over the place. You can craft and improve a bunch of weapons, you can buy them from vendors, you can farm a bunch of crafting materials, you can dismantle stuff you don't need. It's nothing special, but it's functional. And my +3 weapons, the highest they go, certainly carried me through most of the game. But it's not all great. The biggest two things you will immediately notice is that single A game polish and the overall jankiness. You could to some extent say those are the same. In some areas it just means the game sometimes looks amazing with beautiful lighting and scenery, and other times quite ugly in terms of textures. In other areas it means that combat is, well, it's manageable I suppose, but don't expect solid Souls-like combat here. It's not going to happen. Partly because of that, and partly due to some rather poorly designed boss fights, especially the final boss battle. Holy moly, what the fuck were they thinking? But anyway, partly because of that jank, combat can be quite challenging. In a good way, mostly. But as the game progresses, you need to invest points and level up certain stats like intelligence, dexterity and strength to wield certain weapons. If you don't do that, despite the game clearly stating you should, like your boy Thyworm did, you will indeed not be able to wield better weapons and you are going to have a rough time with those higher level monsters. And I haven't found a respec option, so I was pretty much screwed. So I turned down the difficulty for the last 20% of the game or so to story mode. But if you do that, enemy attacks are literally in slow motion, as if you're constantly having bullet time up. It is so weird. They don't just deal less damage, they are slowed in time as well. So I thought last night I was pretty much done with the script, I wrote most of it, I went to bed, I played a little bit more on the Steam Deck, I installed the last Oricru over there and started the second playthrough with a mage. First off, this game runs fine on the Steam Deck, hitting mostly 30 FPS, which isn't bad for a game like this. It is also completely verified, so everything works. But secondly, mage gameplay, ladies and gents, is simply not it. Look at this footage of my mage running around zapping monsters. This is also with story mode on, by the way. It just is not it, and this definitely changed my perspective a little more. If you really enjoy playing mages, I'm not sure this is the game for you. On a different topic, I started to realize this game has made some weird choices. For example, if you run into an area where you're not supposed to be in, the game just puts a barricade there with soldiers who suddenly fire 4 crossbow bolts per second, instantly killing you. At some point, you get the message, don't get me wrong, but you instantly die and all your souls are now gone. You could easily lose 1.5 levels of experience by walking in the wrong direction. It's also very difficult to retrieve your corpse. It's such a weird thing to do, and not even that immersive or something, because as soon as you solve the plot for that area, the barricade is gone. It also illustrates that the last Oricru is more linear than you might think. Yes, you make meaningful choices, but where to go isn't really one of them. That's not bad, I don't mind linear games, but don't expect like an Assassin's Creed Valhalla open world where you can do whatever you want. On a side note, side quests are very limited in number, there are hardly any, so you are mostly following the linear main quest locations. I guess something I haven't talked much about is fun or enjoyment. Is it fun and enjoyable? Now that you know which parts of the game are fleshed out and which aren't, and you also hopefully know what you enjoy, I think you can make the decision if you want to get this game on sale. I already played the demo before, which I thought went well. I put down the €11 and I did not regret my purchase. I had a fun, enjoyable, sometimes frustrating 11 to 13 hours, and after all, I'm happy I played and finished the game. Given the many choices and builds this game offers, it certainly has replay value. I think you could add another 6 to 7 hours for a second playthrough to my 11 to 13 hours if you're a completionist, so that's pretty solid, I would argue. But the game has some rather massive shortcomings, which I pointed out, so be mindful there. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have any more questions, please post them in the comments, I'll try to reply. Be sure to like and subscribe for more future videos in this series. Thanks for watching, making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.